Yeah, welcome to our guests, to our speakers, our friends from the Peter Drucker Global Network. Ladies and gentlemen, just a brief introduction from my side for around 10 minutes, and then we will pleased and honored to have a keynote speech from Hermann Simon. 1 week of discussing the new realities of doing business and managing in our Purpose Summit here at Mannheim. And our focus this week is innovation, climate change, and social responsibility from Monday to Thursday. And today our focus is globalization or deglobalization. The world is everything but in a stable condition. How can medium-sized and competitive companies deal with a fragile world where from 1 month to another, the global business condition can change? So it's a great pleasure and big honor to welcome you all in our this morning session, this afternoon for our Asian friends, with the keynote speaker, Professor Hermann Simon. Professor Simon, are you there already? He will join us maybe just in time, 5 minutes before his speech.
Yeah.
And I would like to invite you to our interactive tool, Mentimeter tool, to exchange ideas for you as guests at our conference. So I hand over to Hermann Doppler, who will explain what we would like to motivate you to join our interactive tool to discuss with us. So Hermann, can you please explain?
Good morning. Also from my side, a warm welcome to our today meeting. So I would like to, on one hand, I would like to present you the access to the Mentimeter. Here you see the QR code. If you take your iPhone, smartphone, or whatever, iPad, you can use the QR code. It will lead you to the Mentimeter. The other possibility is to use this link. The link I will copy into the chat, so you will have the chance to use that link. And another possibility is that you use the direct access with www.menti.com and with the code 56729386.
Thank you, Hermann. Our perspective this morning. We decided to discuss the economic journey of this morning with a panel where the majority of panelists are Peter Drucker scholars. It's a small but good connected and a very special perspective to observe the business world. Another aspect of my introduction, Peter Drucker and his relation to East Asia. Peter Drucker, as a young man, he was very interested in East Asian philosophy and art. And long before he started to do research on management and be a professor of management, as a young exile Austrian person in the US, he started to lecture at Bennington College in the US in 1940, Japanese art. So if we talk about Peter Drucker, you can expect from his wisdom that he, before he did concerning with management issues, he was, well, an open young person with, in this case, even with Japanese art. 1959, Peter Drucker had speeches in Tokyo and Hakone. And for the next 35 years of his life, he was every year in Japan several weeks until he was 86. And he predicted the big success of Japan in the early 1960s. Peter Drucker's relationship to Japan, I quote, "Corporate executives whom I got to know in Japan are my friends, not my clients. So that's a very good example to show which kind of relationship Peter Drucker had with East Asian countries and people he met there. One very famous example, maybe it's not famous outside the engineering people, that Shoichiro Toyoda from Toyota said that the Toyota production system is based on Peter Drucker's philosophy. So the Japanese word is what is a good symbol to explain the Toyota production system is monotsukuri, which means doing things right, with pride, with skill, with perfection from the people, from the work floor, from the shop floor perspective. A personal remark, what I have learned from our friends in our Peter Drucker network in East Asia and discussed with them, management is a very few essential principles. Management is about human beings. Its task is to make people capable of joint performance, to make their strength effective and their weaknesses irrelevant. It's our ability to contribute to society. So doing business in East Asia is to be, I would say, is to be a listener, to have a high focus on sincere communication. It's the respect from a Western perspective on a hemisphere with a long human tradition where ordinary people can quote a philosopher that has lived 2000 years ago. It's the respect that we as Westerners know just a little or nothing about these old cultures. It's always being kind of ashamed how much our business partners know about our Western culture. Someone turned off the microphone.
I did it already.
Oh, okay, thank you. It's always being kind of ashamed how much our business partners from East Asia know about our Western culture, our philosophers, and our history. It happened many times to me that people I met the first time quote a Heinrich Heine poem in fluent German, sang a song, sang a strophe of a German Christmas song, or mentioned the Grimm's fairy tales. What I have learned from Peter Drucker of doing business in East Asia, Peter Drucker has such a huge success there. Most books on Peter Drucker's legacy have been published in Chinese. About every teenager in Japan knows Peter Drucker. There is the bestseller novel Moshidora in Japan, published 10 years ago by Natsumi Iwasaki with 3 million copies, where a high school girl manages her baseball team by using Peter Drucker's opus magnum, management. So almost every young Japanese knows Peter Drucker. It's amazing. Peter Drucker has such a great resonance because he was a listener, because his approach of doing things right through people, being ambitious, build up relationships and trust, never be arrogant, and being very down to earth within his communication. Now I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker, Professor Hermann Simon, Honorary Chairman of Simon Kucher & Partners. For me, Professor Simon is a soulmate of Peter Drucker. If you discuss with East Asian executive management issues, they always emphasize one German management thinker. It's Hermann Simon. His attitude, his research focus, hidden champions, and their monotsukuri way of doing business is a key to understand how companies can be successful in East Asia. So I'm looking forward to your keynote and the discussion with our speakers and global guests. You can start.
Okay. Good morning. Ohayo gozaimasu. Nimen hao, whoever is with us, I'm happy to talk to you. And I will speak about hidden champions. But first, I would like to share with you my last encounter with Peter Drucker. That was in August 2002. And my last meeting was scheduled for November 2012. And I was in Mexico City and called his home. His wife answered, and I said, "Is the appointment for tomorrow standing?" And she said, "He died this morning." So I was shocked and flew immediately back to Germany and did not meet him for the last time. But he has a great memory. And while I'm not talking explicitly now about Peter Drucker, his thoughts have accompanied my Hidden Champions research, and so I remember him when I speak about this topic. Now let's come to the topic, Hidden Champions in the Chinese Century, Ascent and Transformation. And I tell the story of the Hidden Champions in my book, Many Worlds, One Life, which you see on the right. Let's look back at the recent history of globalization. Here are the exports for the last decade, 2010 till 2019. And you see China is number one. For the first time on annual basis, China became number one in 2009. And ever since then, they have been number one, and they are far ahead of the number two, the US. And Germany is a third, a close third. And you see all the other countries are much smaller. That's astonishing. For instance, the European countries are in the same geostrategic location as Germany, but their exports are much smaller. And when we look at the per capita exports, the picture is quite different. Because here we see that Germany is a clear number one among the big exporters, and Korea is also very, very strong. Again, the other European countries, about half the German per capita exports. Now, how can that be? What is the explanation for this? We see China and Germany are the winners of globalization, both in absolute and per capita exports. And here we have a different statistic which shows that the gain from globalization since 1990. On the left column, the cumulative income gain per capita since 1990 in euros. And here you see Germany is number one in the absolute terms. And on the right scale, we have the percentage gain. And here you see China is number one with 800% plus, an incredible increase in per capita income. I have here the gardeners who make noise. I just sent them away in front of my window, sorry. Now, what explains this? Of course, our first thought is that exports are driven by large corporations. And that is indeed true for most countries. Here I show you the Fortune Global 500 companies on the horizontal scale and the exports on the vertical scale. And you see for most countries, there is an almost linear correlation between large company numbers and exports, USA, Japan, France, Korea. And there are two deviations from this pattern. That's China and Germany. So what is different for these two countries who are the winners of globalization, as we have seen? It's the role of mid-sized companies for exports. In China, 68% of the exports come from mid-sized companies, and in Germany, it's the same magnitude, 2/3. So this tells us you need large companies to excel in exports, but in addition to that, you need very strong mid-sized exporters. And these are the hidden champions. What is a hidden champion? A company which belongs to the top 3 in its market in the world, has a revenue of less than 5 billion euros and is not known in the general public. Now you may say 5 billion euros, that's not the typical size of a mid-sized company. That's right, but you have to see that in the global context. And if we compare them to the global 500, they have an average revenue of 66 billion, and the smallest of them still has 25 billion. So we are talking here about a new category of mid-sized globalized companies which are little known in the general public. And the hidden champions concept, I coined this term 30 years ago, has become very, very popular. When you go into the internet, it varies the number, 1.6 million entries. Sometimes it was even higher. The Hidden Champions books have been published in 25 countries, and it has a strong impact on governments. In Germany, for instance, the concept was explicitly addressed in the coalition agreement of the current or the last government. And in China, we have a new initiative to create 1,000 hidden champions, and China invests $1.3 billion into this initiative. And I think it's especially important for emerging countries who should not strive to create Fortune Global 500 companies, because the chance of success is very low. A good example is Malaysia, which has tried to go into the automotive game with Proton 30 years ago. Total failure, whereas a hidden champion like Topglove is a global leader in disposable gloves made from rubber. They went further down in the value chain and did not only sell natural rubber, but the higher value product gloves. Now, if we look at globalization in the last 30 years, we have two very different phases. From 1990 till 2010, we had a phase which we call hyperglobalization. This means that global exports were growing faster than global gross-domestic product. And since 2010, the exports are growing less than the domestic products. And we see that in this slide. It shows on the vertical axis this so-called trade elasticity. That's the growth rate of global exports divided by the growth rate of the global GDP. And you see that was over 2 in the first decade from 1990 on. And since 2010, it's just 1. And since 2014, it's below 1. And so this was long before Trump or Corona. And thus we have a new game in globalization. This relative globalization is likely to continue. This does not mean the end of globalization, but it means that goods exports will be substituted by foreign direct investments. We also see a dematerialization of international exchange. Service exports are still growing faster. We have that here in this slide. You see both in absolute terms and in a percentage of global GDP, service exports are growing faster than GDPs. Digitalization, remote 3D printing contribute to this dematerialization. We have data in one country and print the products out in another country instead of transporting them there. Physical travel will be partially replaced by Zoom. Normally, under old conditions, we have met in Mannheim, Professor Weber, in person. That would have been nice. Now, we can attend this meeting without leaving our home or office. And a bigger challenge is finding the best location in the world for each activity. And that has very concrete consequences. Just to give you a few examples. 2 German companies in the mining technology have relocated their competence center for mining technology to China. Very simple reason, we have no longer mining in Germany, but in China, mining still plays a very important role. So you can only be close to your customers in China. Another hidden champion is just establishing a center for artificial intelligence in China, company from Dortmund in Germany, because they say the conditions to develop artificial intelligence products and processes are better in China than in Germany. So you may think that this means a loss for countries like Germany, Europe, or the United States by relocating activities to Asia, especially China. But that's not true, because it works also in the other direction. For instance, all Chinese automotive manufacturers have a design center in Germany. And we just see the opening of the huge Tesla plant close to Berlin. Intel has announced that they will build 8 gigafactories in Europe, each with an investment volume of 10 billion euros. And just before Corona, I had a meeting with 100 Chinese automotive suppliers, and they said they all want to manufacture in Germany. So we see a total relocation away from exports toward foreign direct investments, and large parts of the value chain will be relocated to other countries. And that even goes further. One hidden champion, Velo, high-tech pump manufacturer, they are setting up 3 regional headquarters, which are legally independent to the largest possible degree in Europe, China, the United States, because they say it will be more difficult to do trade between these regions in the future. That's why we have these massively independent regional headquarters. And at my company, at Simon Kutscher, we have already this set up. We have 3 holdings in Germany, in the US, and in Singapore. They are legally independent. They have the same shareholders, but they are not subsidiaries, daughter companies like this. They are legally independent. And so we are in the US, we are an totally American company, which has nothing formally to do with the German holding. And the same is true in Singapore. So this is a clear trend which is coming. Now a short look at the development of the world, the population dynamics. You are familiar with this extreme population growth in Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, and stagnation, even decline, China, Europe, and especially Japan. And this population dynamics do not are not going in the same direction as economic growth. Here I show you the global world in 2030. On the horizontal axis, we have the growth of the GDP in $1 billion. And on the vertical axis, the absolute size of the gross domestic product. And you see here very clearly, we have a first global league, which is set apart from the individual countries or regions like the Middle East. The first global league in 10 years will account for about 60% of the gross domestic product. And the growth from countries like Brazil, Russia, Africa, India is disappointing in absolute terms. Why? Because they start at a very low level. The growth rates may be high, but the starting level is low. And it's particularly dramatic for Africa. We have seen this explosion of the population, but the African share of the global gross domestic product is today 3%. And in 10 years, it will only be 3.3%. So practically no growth, very little small growth relative to the growth of the world. And you see here that in terms of growth, China is far ahead of all other regions. For the hidden champions, this means it's a clear message. They must be strong in the first global league. You are not winning the global competition in the second global league, only in the first global league. Now let's look at the Ascent, a few examples. How did the hidden champions, and these are numbers for German hidden champions, at which I looked more deeply. We see here one group which has now grown into big champion, ZF, an automotive supplier, I think the number 4 in the world, Fresenius Medical Care, global leader in dialysis, and SAP, you know. These were companies in the hidden champions range 25 years ago with around 500 million euros in revenue, and now they are in the range of 30 billion. So much, much larger. The second group, very, very similar. These are companies which I don't see this on my slide because the pictures are in there. Okay, you see the names. These are companies which are outgrowing the hidden champions threshold of 5 million. And they were in the range of a few hundred million 25 years ago. The same for smaller companies. On the left side, Rational, global leader in automatic cookers for professional kitchen. Birkenstock, you know, from the health sandals. Egos, a global leader in bearings made from plastics. These were companies in the range of 50 million, and they are now approaching the billion. And the smaller group, among which Simon Kucher is, these were companies below 10 million, which are now in the range of 400 million. So we see very, very strong continuous growth over this long period. This is not what you would expect in old industry or old Germany, rather in the Silicon Valley, but these companies have been growing continuously. And now let's go to the business level. And here I have the most important factors of their success. The core is the ambition to be the best. They achieve that through focus. Only focus leads to world class, innovation, and globalization. And all this is surrounded by digitalization and a new driving force ecosystems. And I will illustrate all these pillars of the hidden champion success by concrete cases. Ambition to be the best. Stihl, the global leader in chainsaws, says, either we are the best or we don't do it. Mackevision, global leader in computer-generated imagery, our ambition is to be the absolute number one for computer-generated imagery worldwide, the absolute number one worldwide. For DeepL, the best translation machine, we deliver the best translations in the world. DeepL has been tested against Google and Microsoft. And usually a DeepL translation of a test text from New York Times has 1 to 2 mistakes. The other machines have 8 to 10 mistakes. So it's clearly the best, as proven in many tests. Focus. TeamViewer, global market leader in screen sharing. We focus on online collaboration and remote support worldwide. Nemetschek, global leader in software for architects and engineers. Focus on one thing and be the world's best at it. That's their motto. Or Flexi, world market leader in retractable dock leashes, a seemingly simple product, which is actually not that simple. We only focus on one thing, but we do it better than anyone else. And they have 70% of the world market. Only focus leads to world class. But focus has a disadvantage. It makes a market small. You sell retractable dock leashes only in Germany, that would be a very small market. How do you make it large? By globalizing. And this slide shows you the globalization history of Kärcher, the world market leader of high-pressure water cleaners. They started with their globalization in the mid-70s, and ever since then they have added 1 or 2 subsidiaries per year to their global network. They're right now in 73 countries with their own presence, and the CEO, who is 52 years old, told me recently, during my tenure, I want to be in all United Nations countries. So he has to open another 100+ markets in the next, say, 10 years of his tenure. Here we have a case of a company which is already a little larger, world market leader in assembly products. And you see red is the map where Wirt is presented with its own subsidiaries. Africa, some parts in the Middle East are missing. And if you look at this map in 10 years, they will be everywhere. That's globalization. And here an interesting comparison, where do German versus hidden champions stand in globalization? On the left, I have a couple of hidden champions, and you see they are usually in more than 60 countries. And on the right, comparable size-wise, comparable hidden champions from China. And most of them are just starting with their globalization. They are exporting, but building a global presence through own subsidiaries takes much longer. So the Chinese are in a very early stage of globalization, whereas the German hidden champions are very, very advanced in that regard. More global than mid-sized companies from other countries. Now, let's look at new rules of the game and driving forces, innovation, digitalization, business ecosystems, and sustainability. Innovation starts with spending money. The hidden champions spend double the industry average. More important is the outcome. They have 5 times more patents than average companies. And I show you 4 examples from mobility innovations by hidden champions. This is a regional train. Why do I show you a regional train? This is the first hydrogen-powered train which is running on a daily basis in northern Germany. This is the first electric helicopter in the world, the Volocopter. And they just got projects from Singapore and Dubai to establish autonomous air taxi system. Until they are really autonomous, that will take a couple of years, but they are on a good way. This is Lilium, a vertical takeoff and landing. plane, and Lilium just went public in New York, and they are valued at $4 billion. Lilium. Let's stay with airspace. This is the first hydrogen-powered plane. So it's very environmentally friendly. And this is just a demonstration project by Festo, a flying pigeon. Festo is the global leader in pneumatics, and when I visit a factory somewhere in Asia, I always ask, do you have Festo in your factory? And the answer was always 100% yes, of course we have Festo components. Global leader, which shows through this demonstration what they can do technically. Now again, a comparison, German versus hidden champions, and I look here at the number of employees in research and development. Couple of Germans on the right, couple of Chinese. And what I observe there is that the Chinese have many more people in R&D. Let's, for instance, compare Carl Zeiss optical products. They have 3,100. Hikvision, global leader in security cameras, has 9,300. So this is a real danger for German hidden champions, and it reminds me of another story. In 2004, I visited Nokia in Helsinki. They were the dominant force in mobile phones at that time with more than 40% market share. And they were very arrogant, I have to say, that we have 19,000 employees in research and development. We are unbeatable. Nobody is even close to us. 3 years later, in 2008, I attended a speech by the CEO of Huawei, it was in New Delhi. And he said, we have 52,000 employees in research and development. Almost 3 times more. And you know what came of this? Nokia is no longer there. Huawei is very, very strong. So this is a real danger. And I think the Germans have to do more in R&D investments. And if you look at China, this is the development of Chinese patent applications in Europe. You see a continuously increasing curve. And this next is even more dramatic. It shows you the 10 leading countries from 2000 on. China is now coming, rising, overtaking Germany in 2012, overtaking Japan in 2016, and now the US, and now they're number 1. These are international patents, not the patents in China, which are of a lower standard. So I think the Chinese will be the most important competitors of the German hidden champions in the future. If we have a general look, where do we stand? The Germans have a high global presence. It's still low for Chinese. Global brands, Germans strong. Of course, there's hidden champions only in their target groups. Chinese still very weak. Growth rate, China high. And they finance that through very early IPOs. They go public, collect a lot of money, and invest that into growth and into R&D. And I think the Germans have to reconsider their position there. They usually tend to avoid going public, to remain family-run companies. That's dangerous for the future, because the Chinese simply collect more capital, which they invest very markedly into growth and innovation. Digitalization. Here I distinguish between B2B, is industrial digitalization, and B2C. B2C consumer digitalization is an American and Chinese game. There's no chance for European or Germans in that sector. And the reason is very simple. I explained that to Uber. Uber tested its system for a couple of years in San Francisco, and then they rolled it out into all American cities. When you do the same in Berlin, test the system in Berlin and you roll it out into Europe, you have to overcome 27 language barriers and 27 bureaucracies. So we are not in a location where you can create global standards in mass customization. Very different for industrial processes. They are more complex and they are more standardized across countries, less culturally differentiated. And just to give you a few examples here of German hidden champions which are in this field, TeamViewer, the global leader in remote screen control, is installed on more than 2.5 billion devices. You probably never heard of LSTM, that stands for long short-term memory. That is the software behind Siri of Apple, Alexa of Amazon, and similar applications, installed on more than 3 billion smartphones from Germany and Switzerland. It was invented by Professor Schmidt-Huber of the Technical University of Munich. I mentioned DeepL, the best translation system from Cologne. Celonis from Munich is a global leader in process mining. They are valued at $11 billion. And in autonomous driving, 40% of all patents come from Germany. Or let's take a very small company, MK Technology. They make so-called investment casting systems. That's a very complex technology. And for instance, one of their customers is SpaceX, the rocket company of Elon Musk. And they delivered 6 of their systems to their factory in Long Beach, California. And these 6 MK systems replace 1,000 large 3D printers to make the combustion chambers for the Mars rockets. And another impressive number, how many German suppliers does Apple have? Herr Weber, is your microphone on? Can you guess?
No, my microphone,
Yeah, now it's on.
Yeah.
How many suppliers from Germany, German companies does Apple have?
Yeah, I know your slides. Maybe you are.
You know my slides. Then I asked Sasaki-san from Japan, how many suppliers does Apple have from Germany?
From Germany?
Yeah, German suppliers.
German suppliers, I guess.
Or Apple.
Probably Apple, right? You're talking about Apple.
Yes, yes.
Oh, I have totally no idea about it. But let's say
I give you the number here.
Yeah.
767.
700?
Yeah. 767.
I was talking about 100.
Yeah, that was already a high number. Most people estimate 10 or so. 767. LSTM is one of them. And these are all hidden champions. You wouldn't know any of them. 767. So in business to business digitalization, hidden champions are actually very strong, very often leading. Business ecosystem, it's getting more and more important. And I show you 2 examples. This is a system for extreme ultraviolet lithography. The system which you need to make ever smaller miniaturized chips. And the customers are the foundries and the integrated device manufacturers. The guy who is a hidden champion who produces the system is ASML. And their ecosystems consist of 2 other companies, Trumpf, global leader in lasers. The laser which Trumpf contributes to the EUV system has 450,000 components and weighs 17 tons. And The optical parts coming from size are equally complex. So these three companies together master a complexity which each of them individually could not master. And they have practically a monopoly for these extreme ultraviolet lithography systems. Here I mentioned MK Technology, investment casting. They're also as a much smaller company, and they can only achieve that being a premium supplier to SpaceX. They have cooperations partner in their system in China for rapid prototyping, fast casting. In Germany, Voxeljet, which is the maker of the largest 3D printers in the world, in Russia, in France. And together with this ecosystem, they are able to achieve these extremely high standards. Products, systems are getting more complex, and it's more difficult for an individual company to cope with this complexity. So you have to create these ecosystems, and also you have to do it internationally and globally. This is a departure from the traditional attitude of the hidden champions who try to do everything themselves, who had a very deep vertical integration. The last new driving force, sustainability. Some people say sustainable is a new digital, and I tend to agree. It will be extremely important. And many hidden champions are leading in sustainable technology, and Germany has a competitive advantage here. The reason is very simple. We have some of the strictest environmental standards here. So this is a real opportunity in recycling, in new materials, in remanufacturing, etc. My last point, what are the inner strengths? Of course, employees and leaders. Employees are characterized by a high qualification and motivation. The hidden champions invest a lot in training, about 50% more than the average company. They have a culture of top performance and a high employee loyalty. The annual turnover is only 2.7%. The average for Germany is 7.3%. And strong leaders who stay at the helm for more than 20 years on the average. For large corporations, this tenure is 6 years. So that alone tells you everything about long-term orientation. Let me just give you an example of a hidden champion. Our company, Simon Kutscher & Partners, we are also a hidden champion, and we followed the hidden champion strategy one-to-one. Our goal, market leadership and growth. We are focused strategy, marketing, sales, pricing only on the market side, and strive for a global presence. Where do we stand today? This is our growth chart, the revenue and the number of employees. This year we will be a little over 400 million euros and have about 1,700 people. We have grown continuously. So our growth goal we achieved with our strategy. Global, we are now with 41 offices in 26 countries, and we will continue to open offices in further countries. We are, for instance, not yet in India. Focus and globalization have to go together. And ambition to be the best in our market. Here are a couple of studies from different countries where we usually are perceived today as number one in the specialty of price consulting. We are the uncontested number one in the world. So I can tell you the hidden champion strategy work. I tried it out and I tried to spread it into the world. One initiative is the Hermann Simon Business School in China, which is devoted to the hidden champions concept and to the educating managers for hidden champions. We hope to make this business school also a global enterprise and not confined to China. Okay, let me summarize. Globalization evolves from exports to foreign direct investments. A big challenge is finding the best location in the world for each activity. Be it in Japan, be it in China, be it in Korea, be it in Silicon Valley, be it in Germany. The entrepreneurial driving force behind the hidden champion success is the ambition to be the best. Only focus leads to world class, avoid diversification. Globalize, the music plays in the first global league. You have to be strong there to become global market leader. Do not imitate, innovate, invest in R&D. And even for the German hidden champions, I can say invest more in R&D. For hidden champions in digitalization, the focus should be rather on business to business than on mass consumer markets. Business ecosystems are becoming more and more critical to master complexity. Sustainability can become the new digital and internally create a culture of high employee loyalty. And I describe these ideas in my books, Many Worlds, One Life, and the new Hidden Champions book, Hidden Champions in the Chinese Century, has just appeared in German and will appear in February, next February in English, and also in China, even probably a little earlier. Korean, we also have in Japanese, we also have it underway. So you can read it, follow it in your language in a few months. So thank you very much for your patience and attention. I'm looking forward to our panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Simon. It's always a great pleasure and a great surprise how you analyze complex trends in economies. And here, the new rules of the game in the Chinese century. I really recommend you to read this book. Just a question: I don't. It's the English version is just published now, or will be published?
No, the English version will come out early next year.
Early next year.
2022.
Yeah.
The title will be like our title for this talk. Hidden Champions in the Chinese Century, Ascent and Transformation. Yeah.
So we are looking forward to our global audience to read it, I guess. But I
also signed contracts with Chinese, Japanese, Korean publishers. So they're all in the works.
Great. Okay, thank you. Before we introduce our panelists, I would like to ask Hermann Doppler, what did our audience, what can we have, which kind of feedback do we get from our questions? The first question was, will hidden champions, will there be relevant in a Chinese century? And the audience, the guests said it's very important. So you can see here it's a big factor. The thesis, it's going down. Why is that? I mean, are some people, so the relevance is a little bit going down. Some new people maybe joined it.
One guy voted down. Okay.
Okay.
But not that much. The maximum is as you told it.
Okay, next slide, please. The slide is on B2B markets. Will there be more relevant than B2C markets for Germany's, Japanese, or South Korean economies? Yeah, their impression is quite clear that most of our guests full agree. And then we ask South Korea, Japan, and Germany in the context of China's economic development, where is the journey taking my country? It's I just make it a little bit bigger. One remark was we cannot best China actually in terms of speed, and we are also not willing to compromise topics like health and climate towards business growth, which is good. So we can beat China only in specializing and in developing technology protect climate. That's one remark. I believe that barriers are an obstacle. We can overcome that by calling on politics. That's not enough. We need to build close relationships among companies. At the same time, we must work on innovative products that can be produced competitive. Thanks for this remark.
Herr Weber, may I say a word on this?
Yes.
One conclusion for me is, with under the line of finding the best location in the world, Germans must become Chinese, like these mining technology companies. What we can do better in China, we must do there. What we can better do in Japan, we must do there. So the strategy to compete with the Chinese is to use their conditions to compete against them. And for the Chinese, the same applies. The Chinese must become Germans or Americans. We must organize the value chain that we do everything at the best location. And for different things, the best locations are different.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very important point for our discussion, where in the media the discussion of in a Chinese century is very different what your approach says. But we from the Peter Drucker Society, we have the same view like you. The globalization should go on, and Germans have to become Chinese, and Chinese are becoming German. So that's the way the free market, the multilateral work is the position from your point of view and from our point of view as well. So there is a last remark. We need to be clubs will become the fundaments and core success factors of my country. So to translate it, maybe the blue button says maybe kann sein. Yes, they have to, and no opinion. Okay. So
it's, by the way, very different from country to country. For instance, France has more Fortune Global 500 companies than Germany, but the mid-sized sector is totally underdeveloped in France. So for some countries like Germany, Austria, also Switzerland, or Scandinavia, mid-sized companies are the backbone of the economies. For others like the US, for France, also Japan, large companies are relatively more important.
Yeah. So let me introduce our panelists in alphabetic order. I would like to very warm welcome Dr. Philipp Meyer, speaker, Young Leaders from the German Asia Pacific Business Association. And as well, maybe you can introduce yourself later on. You are also working at the Chinese plant of a hidden champions. You will explain it by yourself. And then very welcome to our very close friend from Korea, Dr. Kook-Hyun Moon. He is CEO of Hansol Textile and founder of the Peter Drucker Society of Korea. Very nice to have you here. The last time in February at our last Purpose Summit, you were the first person that showed us the relevance of the pandemic, because it was in February 12th, where you 3 days before you booked the plane to Mannheim, you canceled it because you had already got problems with the pandemics and your supplying and your plants all over Asia. So that was the first sign that there is something going on 1.5 years ago.
I'll
and a very warm
in February.
Pardon?
I will visit Germany in February because I missed the visit to Germany last November because of coronavirus. So I will visit Germany in next February.
Yeah. And a very warm welcome to Hideaki Sasaki. He is director of the Drucker Workshop Japan, and since 14 years, we have meetings together between our Drucker-Society and the Japanese one. And in a way, why does a German or Mannheim Drucker-Society exist? It's because of you, because the Peter Drucker Workshop of Japan invited me to be an honorary member of your society. And then you asked me a couple of times, why doesn't exist a German Peter Drucker Society? So it was the beginning of our society. So thanks to you. Otherwise, if you not encouraged us to do it, this forum would not be held today. This conference would not be possible. It's in a way, it's your fault. It's to be a volunteer and non-profit organization is a lot of work, but a lot of fun as well. And a very welcome to Professor Helwig Schmidt-Glintzer, the director from the China Center Tübingen. You have been with us last February as well, and you are an expert on China and a very reputed expert on that. So a warm welcome to you. And Michael Wang, it's nice to have you there. Michael, hello. Great to have you. We met each other in the Drucker network as well. For many years, you have been the director of the Peter Drucker Academy in Hong Kong until 3 years ago, for almost a decade. And with you, I met a lot of very interesting Chinese entrepreneurs and Drucker scholars, Peter Drucker scholars in China. And we discussed it for many times, how Peter Drucker's influence in China was and will be. And last but not least, Tomomasa Yagisawa, welcome from us to another good friend from the Drucker Workshop in Japan, where we have to Hideaki Sasaki, we have a long relationship and discussions among us. So it's a great honor to have you all in our discussion.
May I interrupt, Winfried? From my understanding, Dr. Chen Soon is missing. Is this right?
Yes, that's what
I tried. I see someone here with not what I cannot read, but there's also not the picture, so I cannot bring it on the screen. So if Chen Yun is in the circle of the participants, please give me a hint, then I can also bring you on the screen.
Sorry, we didn't talk on that, Hermann. Dr. Chun some days ago had to cancel his being part of our panel, but he will send us a video and we will publish it after our conference, and you can have a chance to look at his statements by video. So he prepared or will prepare a video. So he's a very famous Drucker scholar and has a lot of quite interesting thesis on Peter Drucker's influence on entrepreneurs, on Chinese entrepreneurs, and his video will be published on our website after our conference. So that's why Dr. Chun is not joining us today. Sorry about that. So I would like now to ask our panelists first, Mr. Moon, about some first statements and questions to Professor Simon's keynote. So please, Mr. Moon, it's your turn.
Thank you, Professor Weber. And thank you, Dr. Simons, for your great update on this new trend occurring globally. I learned a lot from Dr. Jimon's presentation, and basically I agree to him in most aspects. But if you have time, let me share my slides. Yes. As mentioned by Dr. Jimon's Korean management champions, whether they are big or medium, they are focusing on digital transformation these days, but at the same time to get the better ESG performances to differentiate Korean company-related supply chain, whether they are serving US economy or European economy. So that is a new trend. You know, as the wished by so many people, you know, we could sign on this agreement 6 years ago, but now the reality is getting worse in Europe and in China and Korea. So, and also US came back to this global agreement, and now they try to emphasize the importance of climate economy and ESG performance. So now Korean companies try to work together among these the medium-sized countries with the help from Silicon Valley. Basically, during the last 2 decades, we learned from EU, Germany, and the US, and transfer those technology and the businesses to China. But now China, it has grown big enough to stand alone, and they don't need any more help from Korean companies or Japanese. So that might be the reason why Korean companies try to find a new role in this global economy, and that is networking these locations additionally to the networks we have utilized during the last 2 decades. So a lot of activities are going on, and I hope Germany can do bigger role in building this first geography or first region in addition to EU, China, and the USA. If we can have solved this region which are spread, but which can be connected as medium-sized countries in terms of economic size. And the main strategy, as mentioned before, is to digitalize the B2B processes as much as possible. So our belief is that we have to smartize early enough or we will die. So many German companies, including Siemens, GTEx, TIS, and many others are working together with the Korean companies and the US companies to digitalize all these infrastructures, starting from product development to product life cycle management, and even up to smart factory management. So historically, Korean company were relying on this ERP, but now this ERP will be replaced by this new digital platform connecting all these and allowing us to build big data and to develop AI-based process management. So we believe that it will be a big game changer in addition to Chinese role. Chinese will continue their the contribution, but we believe Korean companies, together with the US Silicon Valley and some leadership with the tech companies from Germany, we think we can build another horizon. This smart factory is one of those the examples working together with the German suppliers. So one of those smart factory will be built in Vietnam next year, and the other one might be built in Korea year after. And then once those are turning successful, then maybe we can roll out to other countries to fill up their need for reshoring or nearshoring. So that is our plan, and to benchmark this very low personnel turnover rate of hidden champion companies in Germany, a Korean company spent a lot of time to learn from those very low personnel turnover rate operation in Germany. So we are working on this lifelong learning and the training academy with the help from German companies. So those are what we are currently focusing on to find the new role and responsibility in this global economy when China economy grew big enough to stand alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moon. And the new role, that's the point that Hermann Simon pointed out. For Germany, it's the similar situation for you. Country, Korea and Germany, both countries with not much natural resources, but just knowledge workers that try to find a new role in the in the new games, in the new rules. Maybe Hermann Simon, you can directly give a feedback to Mr. Moon.
As I fully agree with, I fully agree with what Mr. Moon says, and I appreciate that he emphasizes the collaboration of Korean with German companies, because what I explained in the business ecosystem is a challenge for global cooperation, where you bring the best competencies and talents together. So I fully agree with what Mr. Moon said. It's very similar to the directions German companies have to go.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So the next turn I would like to give to our Japanese friends, Sasaki-san or Yagisawa-san, who would like to give a comment and maybe has a question to Hermann Simon.
Okay. My name is Hideaki Sasaki. I'm doing the Peter Drucker workshop Japan. I've been doing this kind of things about more than 10 years, and during the period I learned a lot from the Drucker philosophy and the theory, and I became a friend with Weber-san, Winfried. Did this 10 years ago again, and they're doing having a very close relationship with it, and I think that the presentation from Hermann Simon was very impressive, and I learned a lot in a very short time of a period. First, my surprise was that knowing that China has so many companies, but I have never thought about the mid-sized companies, and I even didn't know that they have lots of excellent mid-sized companies in China, and doing a global business as well. So this was a very new findings, and it's again giving the contrast to me that the Japan's mid-sized company or even the large companies are moving a little bit or far behind from the global movement and in terms of globalization. So I have been thinking about how we're gonna redo it again. And I see one of the challenges and also a chance would be that the carbon neutral society and the business. So in terms of that area, that the hydrogen producing, many Japanese companies has a sort of a licensing and R&D investment in place, and in this part they are leading the world. So probably we need to revisit the existing business model for many industry sectors, and to try to find or revisit what doing well and what doing bad, and doing the business, restructuring the business model to cope with the global competition. And in that sense, that I do really like the hints or the things that I learned from Mr. Hermann Simon, that you need to have a very good ambition to it. So this is my quick response to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hideaki. Tomo, you would like to have a comment as well?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you very much. I met actually Dr. Simon like 10 years ago at the University of Tokyo. I remember well. And then this is another eye-opening presentation I got. And but at the same time, it's really aligned with the Peter Drucker 101, I think. And then when Dr. Simon visited Claremont, actually I was a student at the Drucker School, and I learned the basics and really how each area is kind of or each specialty can contribute globally and focus on one thing is what the Peter Drucker really emphasized. So it's kind of realized. So I'm really kind of amazed. And and at the same time, eye-opening part is we're in Japan, and we really were successful in the 20th century with the support from Peter Drucker and others. But nowadays, the information is really limited. So I think we are really tending to the domestic focused. So we hear a lot of the things from China, but that's kind of limited. That's I really kind of notified. And also the small, mid-sized companies in Germany are not unknown for us. So again, we need to kind of really see what's going on. So look outside and what's the new connections. So that's important. And then especially if we just continue observing the things based on the 20th century way, which is a material like exports and imports, we cannot tell the kind of what's going on. So nowadays, design might be done in one area, and then also the supply chain might be done in one area, and then we are meeting. This is a global conference on Zoom, and then China, Korea, Japan, and Germany, and etc. are meeting at one place. So those things are kind of Dr. Simon's talk really made us realizing that. Yeah, thank you very much. And then so I really realized that we have to observe well and think about what's the kind of best contribution, and also the focus is really important. And just let me introduce two persons in the floor, Katsu Fujita from Drucker Workshop and also Yasushi Isaka from Drucker Workshop are also participating. So they might have something to say, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Tomo. Yeah, maybe we can have this the comments of your colleagues from the Drucker Workshop a little bit later. So let's go on with our speakers' presentation and remarks and questions. So, but before I hand over to you, Michael, I would like to point out one detail of Hermann Simon's slides, that Japan, from if we have a look to the numbers, to the world numbers of hidden champions, Japan has around 10% of hidden champions, which is quite above average. Germany is very high, but Japan as well has a very high number of hidden champions, and has therefore in the discussions we have today a great what's happening now, a great impact. So let's hand over to Michael and Michael Wang, a Drucker scholar from China, and please, we are curious about your comments and statement.
Oh, we don't hear you, Mr. Wang. Please switch off your microphone.
I got to unmute myself. Okay, this is okay right now. Okay. Right. Okay. Let me start. Okay. Hello, everyone. I first would like to thank Professor Weber. Okay, to organize such a wonderful global conference. It's a long time I haven't been global conference due to the COVID-19. And I'm so happy to see my old friend, Dr. Moon. Okay, long time no see. Okay, and so many new friends. Okay, appreciate Professor Simon. You gave a very good keynote, and things I didn't got any information before that. I just shared some immediate thinking I had, and with some thought I prepared for this session. I choose the subject as learning and changing a dynamic social ecosystem. Actually, when I received this invitation from Professor Weber, I a little bit difficult to understand why China-centric. Everybody talk about China a couple of years ago still in a quite positive way because China's growth to a certain degree support the entire growth of the global economy. However, due to some political and reasons, and most recent years, China more represent a country rather than contribute to the global society. We sometimes be viewed as a competitor. So why compete? I'm a little bit confused. Okay, even 4 or 5 years ago, most of people talk about China is about how to integrate China into the global society and how to help China companies to get globalized. Okay, and now most of the people start to question whether China is still part of the global society or China is run our own way, are parting from global system. So as a Chinese, I hardly to comment all the things, but especially by giving our government prohibit the free information exchange with the rest of the world. Okay, so I think my view is getting narrow and narrow compared to the rest of the people in other cities in the world. So I'm so happy to join this meeting and learn more. Obviously, in the couple of years last, we all experienced VUCA. Okay, now VUCA is not a word. It's new as get tired to mention these 4 letters, but actually we did fuse. Many we have many reasons to prove this VUCA impact to our day-to-day life. We are so connected. we mentioned, even a butterfly, if they flip the wings, okay, maybe cause a tsunami on the other side of the world. However, we evidently experienced so many big things happened in a couple of years. However, we see the economic not bad as we expected to a certain degree. You can see the stock market right now is so very, very high. Sometimes it's overheated in US, people talking about. And in China, because of the impact of the global supply chain system, and doesn't represent the Chinese companies losing the business now. Vice versa, they are gaining more orders, okay, from all over the world, okay. And a couple of my friend Chinese entrepreneurs, they feel really puzzled why the business getting so good, okay. They cannot explain what happening in the rest of part of the world. We assume the ecosystem must be get some impact in Southeast Asia or rest of the world, so makes the order flood into China. A couple of entrepreneurs talk to me. They worry if the rest of the countries get recovered from COVID-19, whether their capacity of manufacturing will be impacted. Okay, I call this slide I get it from the article of Reflection of Social Ecologist written by Drucker in the later year. Those questions are quite enlightening to me. Okay, even today, we during the pandemic impact, some things we cannot explain. It's not as we expected or as we know. Okay, part of the impact is the economy side and the enterprise, in China and the rest of the world. Actually, I share these slides with my clients, my students in China frequently, and they always appreciate this kind of reminding because they are passionate to learn. Because most of the people in China knows we are limited access to the rest of the world, and in terms of the information and the knowledge, so most of the entrepreneurs are desperately trying to learn what happened in today. And talking about the comments Professor Simon and the rest of the participants gave, most of the people understand China and the large companies like Huawei, Haier, and some listed companies, even the state-owned companies. Actually, in China, there are many, many hidden champions. Consider about the second large economy entity in the world. There are millions and millions of medium-sized small companies. I can give you an example of for one of my clients. Is a lady in Hangzhou. She is late 80s, was born a young lady. Okay, she established a business. She quit from Alibaba and established her own business to selling the to do the e-trading for the Thailand people, and all the consumers in Thailand are her clients. Okay, I cannot imagine. Okay, she just doing the Thailand retail business online every year. Her company can generate 200 million RMB. okay, is about, let's say, 60, around 60 million US dollar business, only for serve the Thailand market in China. And the e-business just so magic. Her company only has 20 plus employees, include herself, okay, can build such kind of large business in retail. Because most of the suppliers are located in China, and so gave the advantage. She can get the best product at best price, and helping the Thailand people to get from the shoes to a tableware of iPhone competitively and conveniently. So it's quite interesting when I look at the word. Is the more I learn, the less I hold my confident to say I understand. But still couple things happen in China obviously. First of all, after the COVID-19 and the de-globalization, reverse globalization, atmosphere, and political uncertainty, most of the Chinese entrepreneurs start to give up the opportunism mindset. They think more deeper how to generate values to the customers and commit to the customer values. During the COVID-19, I learned many Chinese entrepreneurs, they think the customer first. They defer the payment of the customer and our supplier. They trying to manage the cash flow and get the government support, our banks support to sustain the employee and the suppliers to taking care of the ecosystem. Many Chinese entrepreneurs did that based on the old Chinese philosophy. You got to treat people as your family members, especially in the emergency situation. Okay, and most of the Chinese entrepreneurs learned how to make an agile decision and innovatively to do the business. This is a pretty kind of strength of Chinese society or Chinese people. We sometimes not follow the rules and the laws very much. This is the shortcoming, but in the extreme situation, they are also quite innovative, trying to learn how to survive. And they definitely understand, even the government understand the bureaucratic hierarchical decision-making process does hurt the society, does cause many troubles, like the large enterprise, like Professor Simon said, Nokia, or I experienced Motorola, such kind of enterprise. We know how bad that works can hurt our market. Okay, and most of the Chinese entrepreneurs now learning and understand the environmental importance, how to build a business with care and love and sustainable growth. Okay, this is a dramatic change in the last 5 years, especially after the COVID-19. Okay, when I shared the point which raised by Drucker as well, the business for good is good for business. Many of my students and my clients love this, and they take it down, and we have the Chinese version. They put it in the values of their business. Okay, so this is what I shared to every one of you. Okay, I chose this sentence, which is quite German. Okay, quote unquote by Drucker. is, the point to see and mean to look. Okay, thank you very much. And I do wish Professor Simon or some other participant can answer the questions or help me to understand better the rest of the word. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael Wang, for your thoughts and sharing with us. Maybe there is a direct comment from Professor Simon.
Yes, Michael Wang, thank you for emphasizing the role of mid-sized companies in the Chinese economy. Actually, many of the state-owned large corporations are not doing exports. China Mobile, State Grid, etc. The exports in Japan, the globalization is driven by small and mid-sized companies. And adding to your last conclusion, I express my hope that the tension between America and China do not develop in a disaster, that we will live and do business peacefully together. And I have for you a special recommendation in Chinese.
Wow.
That's my autobiography. It's in Chinese. And I also have that for the colleagues from Korea, Mr. Moon, etc. And the Japanese version will come out in January. And if I can send you a copy, I'm happy to do. Please send me your mailing address and I will send you a copy of this book, which also addresses a special chapter on Peter Drucker and a special chapter on the hidden champions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Simon.
I just have one more remark and a small question to you, Michael. Some years ago, the centennial, the 100th birthday of Peter Drucker, 11, 12 years ago, we all over the world, we had some conferences, forums in honor to Peter Drucker's 100th birthday. And you were part of the Chinese team, and we admired your work, where you had congresses, 6 congresses, with each of them more than 10,000 people being part of it. And since that years, you have been in your Drucker Academy, you have had with 10,000s of students, executives, young leaders, you had seminars. So you have a good impression why such a person like Peter Drucker is so influential in China. Can have just 1-2 sentences on that phenomenon, which is the world's biggest resonance nowadays on Peter Drucker's thinking? Why in China such a huge resonance?
Okay. Actually, Dr. Chen Xun, okay, cannot participate. That's so regret. He last minute had urgent meeting arranged by his organization. He cannot participate this summit. He addressed this question quite well via his video. He already took that video. I watched it. Okay, I wish I can send to the Professor Weber and everybody who can see it afterwards. Okay, in short, okay, Dr. Chen bring up a couple of points. First is Peter Drucker really appreciate Chinese culture and understand the Eastern culture quite well. Because China is not open to the rest of the world at that time, so most of the Drucker's contribution to the east part of the world is in Japan. Okay, to that degree, even to that degree, Drucker understands the difference between China and Japan, such as the Confucian and the Zen, Japanese Zen, okay, is the minor difference. Okay, that means Drucker really a deep understanding each country's difference. The second is because of that, in his book, he wrote a pretty neutral, in terms of culture standpoint. It's not like other scholars, okay, more Europe-centric or American-centric in terms of culture. He is more generic. He is trying to figure out what is the values, what is the core of the management, is which are the cross-culture, independent from uniqueness of the culture, can summarize out and can help the entrepreneur and enterprise be successful. So this is make the Chinese people read the Drucker's book not like a foreign book, especially if we translate. Dr. Chen is a very good interpreter to translate into Chinese and make that very much Chinese-like. Okay, just like the book in Japan is the Japanese feels that's just talking Japanese, not feel talk English. Okay, so that's the second part. It's a pretty cross culture neutral. The last thing is the Drucker believes in his book, he wrote that way, and he also remarked the Peter Drucker Academy in China said, okay, to build China is rely on Chinese people, the Chinese entrepreneurs and the managers. Okay, it's Drucker fully understand there is no way to use to send a bunch of people to change a country or change an organization, from one culture to another. Definitely, the people from Western can help, can support, just like Diamond and Drucker did contribute to Japan. But it has to be Japanese themselves, from bottom of their heart, willing to change, then that change can be happening. And China just experienced 40 years connect with the rest of the world. Before 40 years ago, we are quite isolated from the rest of the world. Okay, so we are learning, we are trying to adapt, okay, trying to change. So sometimes I can see the trend in latest couple of years, because for certain reasons, we are going back political way. But I truly believe there are a lot of Chinese entrepreneurs and managers knowing what direction is right, especially learning from Japan. Japan walked the way ahead of us about 100 years. So, just recently, I talked to a professor in Japan, which is Japanese, okay, immigrant to Japan. He did a study, write a book, studied Japanese 100 years long company, long life company, compared to China long life company. Okay, that book published first in Japanese, okay, will be translated into Chinese later this year or early next year. So this is something I believe after the 40 years, we will be become a modernized country and be part of the global family. And I wish I use this chance to seek for help and support to the Chinese enterprise rather than competition. We, yes, of course, we are compete just like Olympic. but we are not in a war of the trade. That is wrong. Most of Chinese and American people believe that. That is the, the possibility to avoid some really bad thing happen. I wish, Weber, I cover your question, and
Yeah.
I hope Dr. Chen can give better one.
Thank you. Yeah, yes, we will be very curious on the video of Dr. Chen, and yeah, we will have a look on it. Thank you so much. So now let's turn to our two speakers that are in between both societies. So Dr. Meyer, Professor Schmidt-Glintzer, both of them are very good connected. And in the case of Philipp Meyer, you are working since years in Shanghai for a German hidden champion, and Professor Schmidt-Glintzer is an expert on Chinese culture. So, but I would first like to start with your remarks, Philipp Meyer, from the practical. We mostly had practitioners now, and you can continue with the practical view from the position near Shanghai to give some comments on our discussion.
Thank you very much, Professor Weber, Professor Simon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to have the honor to speak here today. And good afternoon from Shanghai. I am working for the German technology company Trumpf, and my wife and I, we moved to China in 2019, and the 2.5 years so far have been quite a roller coaster ride here, to be honest with you. And when allow me some general remarks, also going a little bit into the direction of what you, Mr. Wang, just said. When we look at the geopolitical landscape here in Asia at the moment, then I think three things become very apparent. First of all, especially in this time of the global pandemic, it becomes really apparent how important the Asia Pacific region is for the world, not only economically, but also in terms of many other areas, such as fighting climate change or global security policy. Asia is really the hotspot of the 21st century, and will be the focus region. At the same time, we also observe two worrying trends here at the moment, especially in China. The first one being that China does position its political system as a system which is better suited to fighting global crises or external shocks like the COVID pandemic, and has a certain superiority to Western political systems. And the second trend being a massive political and economic decoupling between China and the United States. Many US companies who leave China, the Chinese mainland at the moment, and started as a trade war in 2018 under the Trump administration with basically two goals. First of all, to reduce the structural trade deficit between China and the US, but then secondly, also to contain the Chinese industrial and technological leadership, now extended into really a trade war. And this is something that strongly leads to a divergence of these technological spheres at the moment, and to a certain incompatibility between for technology standards for global operating companies. And the question is what that all means for hidden champions, for German Mittelstand, for European and global business. And I think primarily three things. First of all, substantial localization of supply chains. We at Trumpf see that this is going very local now. We have to stay competitive, but also to Professor Simon, as you mentioned, to meet this competitive edge of the Chinese competition. You have to stay cost competitive, and you have to exactly develop the strengths that the Chinese or the Asian counterparts have. And for this, we have to massively localize supply chains and consolidate everything here significantly in China or in the Asia Pacific region. Second point I want to make is about how the governance model for business in Asia. How do we govern, or how do we want to govern and steer the Asia business? German industry currently still very centrally structured, with central R&D departments located in Europe. And to meet the speed that's necessary to stay competitive here, we also see the clear need to essentially build up a second headquarter here in the Asia Pacific. As you said, Professor Simon, with Velo, I think this is really the right direction to allocate key competence here in the region to meet the speed. And the third point I want to make is to substantially strengthen Asia and Chinese competence in German society, in German business, and also German in the political system. I think this is very important for us to be seen as an important partner who has to bring something to the table, that we have a good pool of well-educated people who have a good network in the region. With this, I want to leave it for the moment, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Philipp Meyer. Maybe a comment directly from Professor Simon.
Oh, that's excellent, Philipp, what you said. I think you are in your thinking far ahead of what the average in Germany is. We need more China competence, and I also find very important and interesting what Michael Wang said, and combining that with Philipp's remarks shows China must become a normal member of the global society, of the global business society. And I think that is the wish of Chinese people and also of people in the West. And maybe Trumpf, which is one of the stars among the hidden champions, can be a role model. So I also appreciate, Philipp, that you talk publicly about that, because the hidden champions are usually quite hesitant to go public with these opinions. They are verschwiegen. So thank you very much for these remarks, and especially also to Michael Wang for your statement on the role of mid-sized companies, entrepreneurs, and the relations between China and the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's good to hear that we are all with the same opinion and have the same direction in, well, that it's becoming normal that China is a member of the global business community. So our last...
Let me ask or make a suggestion to Philipp. Philipp, what you said would be an excellent contribution for an article in the Frankfurter Allgemeine. I don't know whether you are allowed to do that on your own, but I could ask Frau Leibinger-Müller to give you the permission to publish that to a wider audience. And Herr Weber, let me add something on Peter Drucker. What are the roots why Peter Drucker is so well received in Japan and China? Because he grew up in the most multicultural society history has seen, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. In this empire, 23 languages were spoken. So it was similar to the European Union, but it was one empire. And so he was culturally open, like reach audiences in China which are beyond our imagination. I gave a speech at a big conference on digitalization on November 1st. 10.2 million people watched this conference. And today I got a message from the organizer that in the meantime, 30 million people have watched the recordings of this conference. So advice to each of you, be active in China. You will reach more people than anywhere else in the world.
Great. Professor Schmidt-Glintzer, Hermann Simon mentioned that Germans become Chinese and Chinese become Germans. What is your statement on his prediction?
Yeah, it's not so easy after all these statements to bring them something new into this panel. I think it's right, we should learn being Chinese as the Chinese learn to be German, Americans, and so on. The Chinese culture is a learning system, and the Chinese success is mainly based on the fact that the Chinese society is a learning society, and what we encounter at present is also some kind of learning. And this was also brought up in the chat by Grace Fu and Matthias Niedenführ. And I will only take up one point. Michael, I thank everybody, Hermann Simon and all the others for their statements, but I will start with Peter Drucker's statement brought up by Michael Wang. The great danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, it is the act. It is to act with yesterday's logic. And I think to isolate China and to say China is standing alone, America is standing alone, Europe is standing alone, this is following yesterday's logic. And if this leads to isolate China again, or to contain China, as was brought up by Philipp Meyer, that there is a containing strategy in the Chinese-American rivalry, I think we should overcome these notions. And as Mr. Moon stated, that there is a European Union, China, and US. He painted in red color, and the other countries in East Asia as blue colored. I think this is also a kind of framing which I would like to overcome. I would like to paint all these containers blue, and to think about a new restructuring of cooperation, maybe also competition, but there is no way of turning inward or localize without being aware of the necessity to think global. Although we know now in this pandemic situation that globalization is a very more difficult than ever, but still the future of mankind can be conceived only in a global perspective. And therefore I would very much strengthen all those notions who argue again a new isolation, a new containment, and of course we have to restructure. And what Philipp Meyer said, that we have to localize supply chains in China or East Asia, that is certainly true. The Siemens company also restructured itself, as you know, during the last years, and this makes Siemens very successful. And I think there should be change and restructuring, but we should be aware of the fact that we don't conceive in yesterday's logic, what will prevent us for finding a good future, as I think it was Peter Drucker's aim, and as it was brought forward by all of you in different sentences by Michael Wang and by Philipp Meyer and Hermann Simon. So I think this openness is and one thing, if we learn to be Chinese in Europe, we should just learn to be open to the world. If you imagine how many Chinese went abroad to study abroad and how much they looked on what the other world, the outer world, thought about and thinking about China, this encounter they were pursuing is one of the fundamentals of the success of the Chinese as a system in general. I see the shortcomings, I see the problematics also, of course, but I would like to end up with this statement because time is running out, and maybe in the audience there are others who want to give comments or have questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Schmidt-Glintzer, for your remarks and your optimism that that we should not use yesterday's logic to solve the problems of today. Yeah, let's open our panel to our guests' questions, and maybe Hermann Doppler, he was following the chat. Maybe there is one or two remarks from the chat that maybe we can bring into the panel.
Yeah, we have
maybe just one more point. And if you have direct questions in a verbal way, then please use the reaction buttons to lift your hand. That's the possibility. So that's the best way to. But maybe just Hermann Doppler, which commands and maybe important questions came on the chat.
So there were different commands. On one hand, according what Mr. Moon pointed out, is that in the hydrogen there will be a lot of possibilities to work together, to cooperate. This comes from a German side. I think this is really something where because in Asia hydrogen is also a main part of your strategy, so there would be many chances. The other, what was pointed out, is here we have to learn to work more together, and there's also the question, we have to do it on our way, and we have to find solutions. I would say it in these words, and there is one point, I'm just looking for this, according investments. Where was it? There was it. Nice statements, Mr. Wang, for your presentation. However, many investors are pulling their dollars out of China en masse. More than $1 trillion worth of Chinese equities have been sold in the past 12 months. Mind you, the country clamped down on big tech, US-listed corporate giants, and after-school tutoring companies, according to the new UBS research. And that fear over regulation has begun trickling beyond China's borders in the rest of the Asia-Pacific region as well, in markets including Japan and Korea. Probably Mr. Miller, he will comment on this. And I'll just move to the other comments. There are huge chances to China. So I think that the message you were talking about is understood and is commanded also in that direction. So I think we should look to the participants who want to give a comment verbally. So please raise your hand, and then we will bring you on the platform here. It's always the same. We need the first one. So Winfried, probably you can take over again, because I don't see anybody who just raised their hands. But what is still open, I think, is Mr. Or Katsu-san, or how is he called? Yagisawa-san. Should we let him on the platform, because we talked about this?
Yes, yeah. Katsu-san may have some comments. So can I have him also?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So he will be there. He is.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Comment about the overall contents. Is that okay?
Or specifically what Hermann Doppler-san mentioned a little bit. Yeah, but both, if you could. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was a bit out. Sorry about that. So, Tom-san, could you ask me
maybe you can just briefly touch on your general comment shortly.
Okay.
Short.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I learned a lot from the session. As you might know, Japan is facing some challenges. For example, we are facing the aging society quite rapidly, or we are, how to say that, for example, the number of so-called unicorns, like $1 billion market valuation, not public company, or that kind of number is quite low in Japan. But at the same time, we have thousands of middle and small sized companies. Of course, not all of them are hidden champions, but we have quite, how to say, the positive aspects of in our industry. So my comment or question is that how to the question to the Professor Simon, how to say, the very shortly, what is the best way to train and educate the manager or leader from now on to lead or develop the hidden champion companies in Japan, in such a situation in Japan, which we are facing challenges. Could you give us any comment about how to train or educate the manager or leaders to increase the number of hidden champions?
Yeah, Professor Weber said that there is a substantial number of hidden champions in Japan, but there's a structural difference to Germany. Many of the Japanese hidden champions are suppliers to the large Japanese corporations, and so indirectly internationalized through them. If Sony or Hitachi is a global market leader and they have a supplier for this globally leading product, the suppliers in champions is also a global market leader for this segment. That's true for sensors and similar products. So one point I would encourage them is to go international on their own, not only to depend on the large corporation. And the same applies, by the way, to Korea. And then you have to go back to the roots and create a startup culture. But because hidden champions emerge from startups with new technologies in new sectors. And a very important part of the explanation was, so this is also a part, and a societal problem in Japan is that mid-sized and smaller companies are not very attractive as employers. Everybody wants to work with a prestigious large corporation. So this, I think, it should also be changed, because if the mid-sized companies don't get top talent, they cannot become world class. So it's a very complex cultural and societal issue.
Interesting. For a larger corporation seem to be similar in German society. what do you think about the? Is that correct? My assumption is correct?
It's yes and no.
Yes and no.
In
Okay.
the general picture, it's correct. Of course, the most attractive employer, and that applies to most hidden champions. They are not in the big cities, but they are rather in rural areas and seen as very attractive employers. And in each region, you have talent. So attracting the talent very early is my recommendation. Having internships, master thesis written with the company, and then bring them back after they've studied somewhere to the company. So nationally, it's true what you said. The big ones are the most attractive ones. Regionally, hidden champions can be very attractive employers and get top talent from that region.
Thank you very much, Professor. It's very clear. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Fujita-san. Maybe I
could ask Philipp Meyer. Where are you from, Philipp? Where did you grow up?
In Bremen. So I'm from the north.
That is a counterexample.
Yeah.
Bremen is not that close to Stuttgart, Ditzingen.
Winfried, there is a comment of Mr. Niederfuhr. Did you see it? Should I bring it on the table here?
Yes, please.
So there's a question of Mr. Niederfuhr, Matthias Niederfuhr. He unfortunately has no connection to no possibility to give this verbally. So he wrote, what role can companies in Southeast between the US and China? So we tend to
question to me, or is there somebody from?
No, it's a general question, especially also to the Korean colleagues and the Japanese colleagues, because we are there in the same position. The US and China, they are dominating some games, and we are. The question is, how can we act? What should be our action?
Yeah, who would like to answer?
I'll answer a little bit. We cannot talk about overall South Asian countries. So it consists of really different level of the development, right? And then the country I know is Vietnam. I did a small business in Vietnam, and the GDP of that country is like 8% per year or so, and it's really growing. And but so far nowadays, not the real high tech, but some technology manufacturings are going on. So that's kind of situation, and it's really changing year by year. So we cannot, based on really kind of old knowledge, so not yesterday's logic. But the next neighboring countries like Laos is really different. So it depends on. But looking at the Vietnam, yeah, it's kind of a really growing manufacturer, and also consuming power is really big. So that's kind of a position I can tell. So maybe I cannot tell all the South Asian countries, but Vietnam is, as a manufacturer, I think it's now succeeding some part of the not so high tech part from China. And then the consuming part, it's really digitalized. So that's something I can mention. And I think I should pass to somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Toma. Maybe Mr. Moon, you are very active as well in Southeast Asia. Can you have a comment on this question? We don't hear you.
Yeah, the company I'm now working for, named Hanso, is one of the top 10 investors in Vietnam, and having over 20,000 people employed in Vietnam. I'm very much impressed with their eagerness to upgrade their industry. Learning system, compromise between German the lifelong learning system and the apprentice system with the Korean lifelong learning system, and putting the world first smart factory, relying on this digital twin systems and the cyber physics system and the big data and the AI. So I think Vietnam will catch up Korea soon. And similarly, India and Indonesia will catch up Korea and Japan. I think a little bit matter of time. China was behind Korea and Japan 3 decades ago, significantly. But now, their size is big and some leading companies are doing so well. And a similar thing will happen in Vietnam and Indonesia and India. And sometimes some Thai companies are impressive as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Moon. I have we have another couple of minutes, a question to one of our Japanese friends, Isaka-san. Yasushi Isaka is with us as well. And maybe we should have a look at for the last few minutes, as we mentioned, to build up competence, mostly among young people. That's a key point for the future for all of our countries. And Philipp Meyer mentioned China competence. For especially, we should motivate a lot of young Germans to build up China competence, which is at the moment not at the highest level. We have to work on that, and it's as well leadership competence. So that's another way. We have a lot of, in our network of Peter Drucker Society of Mannheim, we have a lot of young engineers, and mostly we have a majority of our members are engineers. And the question is, maybe Isaka-san, if you would like to give a comment on that. You are very good connected to Japanese young people, and you recently wrote a book on building up competence based on Peter Drucker's philosophy. So I mentioned at the beginning at my welcome address that Peter Drucker, even every school child knows Peter Drucker. So what is your approach, and why did you write this book for young Japanese and young entrepreneurs? Can you give us a brief impression on that?
We see Yasushi-san on board. Yeah, we can see him here.
He is on our guest list, but maybe he doesn't hear. He's
in the list. Yeah, Isaka-san. Yes, Yasushi with the kind of that cartoon icon.
Yeah, Isaka-san, yeah. Can you hear us?
Okay, maybe he is not listening to us at the moment. But there, Professor Schmidt-Glintzer, you have another.
Yeah, I just would like to take up this notion of China competence. I think we should not in this way isolate China. We also need Korea competence. We need competence for Japan. And China competence is also includes, of course, to know about Chinese history, the changing self-concepts in China and all these things. It's very complex, and I could talk about long on this topic, but I at this point also want to say, sorry, I'm not. I also want to say that we should avoid of isolating China in contrast to other areas in East and Southeast Asia. China is just one part, and we should be aware of this. And Guangzhou and the Canton area is different from northern China, and we should also know about the internal differences. And they are as important as because they have a common history, which is part of world history, but which is also part of an East Asian connected history. And we should also be aware of that. And this also is one very important aspect of being and remaining successful in dealing with China and East Asia.
Thank you so much, Professor Schmidt-Glintzer. That's a very
may I
Weber.
add one point to these very interesting remarks. Somebody gave me the advice: don't look at China as one country. Look at the provinces as countries. Many of these provinces are bigger than European countries, and that really gave me a different view of China. So when I come to Shandong or to Guangzhou, I think of this as a country like a European country or like Korea or Japan.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much.
Can I also comment on the question?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. I also totally agree, and don't misunderstand me. I think what we need is we need to build up Asia competence. And as you said, China is one major player in Asia, but we surely also need to build up competence for other regions in the Asia Pacific. And this also goes back to the last question. How do we position ourselves as Europeans in this currently very difficult situation between China and the US? And I think we need to we as Europeans need to diversify our Asia strategy. As Germans, we have traditionally had a very strong focus on China, which is all right, and also economically makes sense because China is the major economic player in the region, but we need to diversify and also focus on other regions, especially Southeast Asia, India, who develop extremely or very dynamically at the moment. How I think one example, because I think this question is extremely difficult and extremely complex, and one from our experience at Trump, one industry that illustrates how relationships in Asia, how complex relationships in Asia and supply chains in Asia have become, I think, is the semiconductor industry. When you look at the semiconductor industry, you will see a very, very fragmented global supply chain, probably one of the most complex supply chains in the world. It started in the 70s in the United States with Intel chip production, then the first wave of internationalization to reduce production costs to Japan. Then in the 80s, a further wave of localization to Korea. And then in the 2000s, early 2000s, a third wave to Taiwan. And now today we have the situation that we have a highly diversified supply chain with almost 75% of the production capacities allocated. Sorry, Mr. Weber, yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah, we have just 2 minutes left. So.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I wrap up. So what I want to say, we have 75% of production capacities allocated in Asia and a very interdependent supply chain. And this is extremely complex to handle and not solved at the moment. But I leave it with this for the moment and hand over back to you, Mr. Weber.
Yeah, we should stop within the next 2 minutes because we have another forum for another hour at 11:15 in German. Those who speak German are invited to join us in 2 minutes together with Hermann Simon and Philipp Meyer. But so we have to say goodbye and thanks a lot to the guests and speakers. But before I do it, I would like to mention the forum at 1:00 p.m. at Central European Time with Adrian Wooldridge, the political editor of The Economist, which is the only newspaper in the world, weekly newspaper, which is really a global news. So it's a very interesting discussion we have with him. And that's maybe another comment concerning you, Professor Schmidt-Glintzer, on the cultural foundation of learning. So there is a thesis that Asian children are more resilient in learning. A difficulty is a spur for effort, says Jin Lee's study, not an excuse for giving up. So the issue in 2 hours is on meritocracy. That's a big point for competitiveness, and meritocracy with Adrian Woolridge we'll discuss just in 2 hours. So this is just an announcement from my side. So for the last minute, each one of you, please. I thank you so very much. I learned a lot. It was a great pleasure and honor to have you there. From each of you, maybe one sentence to say goodbye.
Okay, I think this is just the beginning, and then let's keep discussion, continue discussion. Thank you very much. ありがとうございました。
So thank you, and hope to see you soon again.
Thank you very much, and see you on the next panel.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing with you guys again. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Michael?
Thank you. See you all soon in Korea.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
This is a
you
wonderful
so much.
session, and yeah, wish to share ideas in the next time.
Yeah, this is just the beginning. Thank you, Tomo, for your words. It's that's what we should see you next time. Well, on a global conference. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.